Peace, family. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. It is Friday. Happy Friday! October the 10th, 2025, and the time is 12:42 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Did you catch Melania Trump's speech today? It was very brief, quick, and to the point. Let's start with her name, Melania Trump. Melania as in melanin, melanin trumps. Melania and her husband Donald Trump, or Donald John Tavius Trump, as we've affectionately come to call him, are all seeking to establish peace all over the planet, but particularly in America, or starting in America with the indigenous autogenous peoples that have a lot of melanin. So that's why she was chosen to be the one who would be the wife of President Donald Trump, or that's one of the reasons. Another reason is because she is of the Romanov bloodline in Russia, and she is the rightful heir to that area and the rightful queen. So she was put with President Donald Trump in order to protect her, as well as for some other reasons. Well, today she spoke, and it was interesting to watch her speak instead of her husband. This is the rise of the matriarchy, okay? Everything's being returned back to the indigenous people, starting with the land here in America, then the gold, the resources, and all that, but also our system of governance, which starts with the woman. So the rise of the matriarchy is coming back, and that's why we saw Melania Trump speak today. What did she speak about? She spoke on behalf of children. Now, she mentioned children that are Ukrainian children that reside in Russia. But when she started off her speech, she said, a child's soul knows no borders. And that's true. The soul, period, knows no borders, but specifically, the child is to be protected, loved, nurtured, and cared for. So that's why it was a part of our governance to allow the woman, or to have the woman, or the matriarchy, to govern society, because we are concerned about the women, the planet, and the children. Now, men will go to war anyway. They don't really care about things like that. They were designed for war. They would put their lives on the line. They would burn this whole crap down in order to get a mission accomplished. Women, on the other hand, want peace. We're concerned about the children. We're concerned about their souls. We're concerned about even men and nature and ourselves. So the matriarchy is now speaking up. And she said, a child's soul knows no borders. Notice that she also says that President Putin of Russia received her letter and he's willing to work with her. Well, of course, because she is the queen and she is from the Romanov bloodline, and she speaks on behalf of the Romanov bloodline and people all over the planet. She says since President Putin has received her letter, he's willing to work with her. She said she was talking about how children from Ukraine are now residing in Russia, but she needs both sides, Russia and Ukraine, to work with her to do what's in the best interest of the children. And she said both sides are willing to work with her. Notice the numbers that she mentioned. She mentioned how 8 children were separated from their families, or 8 families were completely involved in this, and how 3 were separated and put in one place, and the other 5 were separated and put across different borders. So 8 is the number of abundance and prosperity and infinity. I'm not quite sure what 5 represents, but I would ask you all to look into that. But 3 is the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Mother, as well as some other numerological significance to the number 3. But I just want you to pay attention to her speech and see what kind of codes you caught in her speech. I also thought that it was very interesting to note she talked about minority and children being minors. But once they reach 18 and come to the age of majority, we want to make sure that they're able to speak for themselves. Why did she talk about the age of minority and the age of majority? Well, there could be many reasons. For one, you don't want children who can't speak for themselves to be taken advantage of. But secondly, when you think of what has happened in America, we've been treated like we are children. We've been told that we are not able to speak for ourselves, and that's why you need attorneys to speak or attorney on our behalf. That's why you need the deep state to be the trustees of our inheritance, and particularly the inheritance of the indigenous people here in America, because it all started with us. But overall, it's everybody, how they've enslaved everybody. And they said, if you did not speak up for yourself, Once you reached 18 and reached the age of majority and took control of your birth certificate bond, then these people could rule over your inheritance forever. So these are just some things that I picked up from listening to that speech. And I want to thank my friend Murray from Tennessee, who told me she was even speaking, and we listened to the speech separately, and then we came back and we talked about what we saw in the coded messages. You're going to see a lot of things happening right now during this Feast of Tabernacles. I've told you this is the Feast of Booths or Feast of Tabernacles. This is the harvest season. That's why we just had a harvest moon, and this is a Hebrew holy day season that started September the 23rd with the Feast of Trumpets, like Donald Trump. Then you count 10 days from Feast of Trumpets, and during those 10 days, you do some introspection and reflection on your life, where you are, where your soul is. Remember, Melania says a child's soul knows no borders. You had to look at the condition of your soul between the Feast of Trumpets or the New Year on September the 23rd for we Hebrew people. Count 10 days, and during those 10 days, we call the 10 days of awe, AWE, and get your life right. Make amends with the people in your life. Make amends with everybody around you, because your soul is at stake. Now, if you are a Christian, you know that your soul has to meet certain conditions, and it has to be good in order to ascend to what we call heaven, if you are a Christian. If you are not a Christian, but you believe in the principles of Ma'at, you know, when you transition or transcend, your soul or your heart will be weighed on the scales of Ma'at. And if you want to ascend to higher dimensions or higher realms of what the Christians will call heaven, your heart had to be deemed as light as a feather. So this is why during the 10 days of awe between September the 23rd and October, counting 10 days starting from the 23rd, October the 1st and 2nd or 3rd, wherever it falls, you are to get your life right and make amends with people. It doesn't matter if you are the offender and you've offended somebody, you get your life right. If you are the offendee and you've been offended, it is your responsibility to extend the olive branch and give the person that offended you an opportunity to make amends. See, oftentimes we want to talk about how somebody offended us, how we are able to stay mad and we can just cut them off and have this cancel culture. But that does not work with God and the ancestors. You have an obligation, if somebody has offended you, to go and make amends. Okay, you have an obligation if you've offended somebody to go and make amends, according to my Hebrew culture and according to Christian culture and according to many ancient cultures. So during those 10 days between the Feast of Trumpets, which is New Year or Rosh Hashanah, and the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur, which occurred in October, you are to get your life right with others. Then on October, I think it fell around the 1st or 2nd, maybe the 3rd of this year, which for us, it was the 1st or 2nd for many people who are in my congregation, you fast for 24 hours and you get your life right with God. You make an atonement with the Creator. At one meant atonement, atoning for your sins, making sure you acknowledge to God that you've made some mistakes, if you've made mistakes throughout the last 365 days in a year, and repent or ask for forgiveness and make a commitment to not do it again. And if you do sin or trespass against God, your ancestors, or your neighbors again, you make a commitment to the Creator that you will get it right quickly. This keeps us on our toes and keeps us prepared to ascend to higher levels of consciousness. So on the Day of Atonement, you fast for 24 hours. That was around the 1st and 2nd of October. Then you count 4 days and you'll get the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths, where we commemorate the children of Israel coming out of slavery, traversing through the wilderness for 40 years and being sustained in the wilderness. Now they build booths or temporary dwellings in order to mimic. Now, and today we do that in order to mimic or recreate our experience in the wilderness when the children of Israel had to make makeshift homes out of trees and branches and leaves, etc., etc. So the Feast of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles, we commemorate God's goodness during the wilderness experience. And even if you don't believe in a biblical story of what happened with the children of Israel, today we commemorate and thank God or the Creator and our ancestors for provisions, for the Creator's providence, for how the Creator took care of us throughout the last 365 days and all of our lives. We testify of the goodness of the Creator. We have a great festival on October the 6th because that's the first day of the feast, and we do it for 8 days. So you have the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. That number 13 is a powerful number. Now, the people in power would tell you to be afraid of 13. They won't have a 13th floor with the Empire State Building. Why? Because 13 is a high vibrational number to we indigenous people. They are afraid of the power of 13 because it resonates with the people here on the land that are the first Americans that were misnomered and misclassified as Black or African American. So they won't have a 13th floor at the Empire State Building. And remember that New York was actually the empire of the Moroccan throne. So there's a lot of reasons why they told you to fear the number 13. But this year, you should expect something spectacular to happen on or around the 13th, between the September the 23rd and October the 13th, which this year not only is the last great day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or Feast of Booths, or Feast of Harvest as we call it, but it's actually also Columbus Day, which they now call Indigenous Peoples Day. Family, they are preparing you for a great awakening. This is the second coming of Christ, which is a second coming of Christ consciousness. So the trumpet will be sound according to Revelations, and the dead in Christ will rise first, and then those which are alive and remain shall be caught up to meet him in the air. That's what the Feast of Trumpets on September the 13th, the new year, was about. Well, for those of us that are in the know, the second coming of Christ is in fact a second coming of Christ consciousness, where we're going to awaken and we're going to raise in vibrational frequencies, and we're going to be changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, where our bodies will become crystalline. No longer will we have to suffer with death and disease and sickness, but our bodies literally will change as the planet ascends. That's what we're commemorating and celebrating, unbeknownst to a lot of people, during the Feast of Harvest. So again, the Feast of Harvest, or Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths, happened between October 6th and October 13th. It is an 8-day feast. 8 days represents abundance and prosperity. Melania Trump spoke today and said 8 families were affected in the war. She said 8 children were reunited with their families. 5 have been separated and gone one place, and 3 have been separated across borders. But 8 is a significant number, so you're going to continue to hear about 8. It represents power, prosperity, abundance, and when you turn it on the side, infinity. I would say that this is a wonderful time for them to release Nasara and Jasara, or a whole lot of wealth coming onto the planet. Now, a lot of people are concerned about and thinking about and wondering, is this the time we will go to the banks and get an exchange on our currencies if you have foreign currencies? Possibly, but you also see silver and gold going up in value. A lot is happening. Gold reached a high of $2,072.30 the other day. Silver went above and beyond $51, like Area 51, yes, like America plus what Canada being 51, those all being part of the region of the Moor dynasty of the indigenous people's land. A lot is happening right now. So yes, silver and gold will continue to go up. Your currencies are going to continue to be revalued, and this is a good time to exchange on the currencies. But for those who don't have gold and silver and currencies, it's okay. We're going to release Nasara Jasara funds, whether they call it Nasara Jasara or not. Not only will you have access to your birth certificate bond and your social security numbers that's been trading on stock exchanges all over the world, but recall, America is the richest nation in the world. If not the richest, one of the richest, but it makes sense that it's the richest nation because everything started right here in America. Egypt is in America. Morocco is in America. All of those biblical names and words were in cities and states or whatever countries were right here in America. And the old biblical maps showed you that. So Nasara Jasara benefits will happen. So be encouraged. Just like other nations that are oil rich take care of their people, America is going to take care of her own. Now, also consider that when Donald Trump made a lot of agreements, trade agreements in the Middle East, he was gifted with rare earth minerals. He was gifted with gold and silver. He was gifted with a plane from Qatar. He was gifted with lots of wealth, and those trade agreements would bring trillions and trillions of dollars into America. Trump also made trade agreements with China, which a lot of people didn't report on. We broke that news as soon as it happened because mainstream media refused to let people know that President Trump made a huge secret trade agreement with China. Once Trump made a trade agreement with China, that meant the whole world had to come on board, because you're talking about the two largest economies in the world agreeing to trade with one another, agreeing to reconcile their differences. So that made way for all other nations to agree to trade with each other and to trade with us in America. And that is why President Trump declared yesterday on the number 9 peace in the Middle East and the cabinet of peace. What is he doing? He's restoring the principles of the Moroccan people, the indigenous autochthonous people here in America. What are those 5 principles? Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Love, truth. He's uncovering things. Love, we're establishing love and unity with all nations. Peace, he's declared yesterday as the peace in the Middle East, and he declared that he had a cabinet of peace. Love, truth, peace, justice. He's bringing justice to the children, not only in Ukraine. Thank you, Melania Trump, the matriarch. Thank you, Creator. But children all over the world, nations all over the world. Justice, love, truth, peace, justice, and freedom. We have achieved our sovereignty. And if you missed my video I did a couple of days ago, I said, breaking news, America has become sovereign. And I told you how that happened. So Trump is reinstating our principles as the people here that were the original American. If you want to know who the original American is, go to the Webster's 1828 definition of American. It is the copper-colored people found here by Columbus, but now applied to Europeans. There were not original Americans. They're not autochthonous. They didn't spring from the soil here. Now, they were brought here. They were grafted in from the melanated woman, so they are our children, as are all the other people here on the planet. But everything started here in America, also known as Amorica, Turtle Island, the North Gate, Northwest Africa, however you deem to see it. But the land is being restored to the original peoples here. The law is going to move from constitutional law to common law, because that was our way of being here before the people, the Europeans and their Moorish, dirty Moor, or I don't even want to call them dirty, but overlords that brought them here, and the in non-human beings or entities that came here to cause division and confusion on the motherland. So America is the motherland. America is the motherland. And they tried to break some of that to you when they had the movie, The Black Panther, and they talked about Wakanda forever. Wakanda was a place here in America, actually. And in that scene, they tried to pit the American man, who they call Killmonger, against the Black Panther from Africa. And they were fighting over the throne, right? And they made it so that the African won the war. And the good part of that was that they said they were going to use their minerals to free the whole planet. If you saw the deleted scene at the end, which some people say that was letting you know about Zimbabwe and how the Zimbabwean Zim would be revalued, and that bond would help to liberate the planet. But key messages that were coded in there was that there was some type of friction that's created actually by the deep state between the African and the melanated Negro, so-called Negro. We're not Negroes, but so-called African American. That should not have been. I've always been team Killmonger. I didn't like his name. I didn't like that they chose to call him Killmonger, because they like to desecrate the name of the melanated man here on our own turf. And I dislike that. But so I didn't like the fact that both of both of them were fighting, the African and the American, and I don't like that it should have been any type of fight because they both had a rightful claim to the throne. But they tried to make it seem like the African won so that they can disinherit the so-called Black people here. The deep state continues to try to make indigenous people here think that you came from Africa when we didn't. America is our motherland. That's why we say Wakanda forever, okay? America was our land. We are Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole, Blackfoot, or whatever. Your parents told you who you were and where you came from. Your ancestors, your elders told you that America is your homeland. In summary, everything is being returned back to the original people here in America and all across the land. And President Donald Jontavius Trump has been selected to do that. And his wife, the matriarch, the queen of this region, is speaking out on behalf of the children. I don't want to bore you with all this information. I would just say that this is a high holy season for we people. We are the indigenous Americans. I'm talking about people classified as Black. What they were letting you know is that we have Black status, the status of the dead, which was actually originally given to Europeans that came here, and they were the original Negroid. When you understand what Negro or Negroid came from, you will see why they called them Negroes. But then they turned things around to call us the Negro and to call us Black and call us colored because of colorable law. Look that up. But we're not. We were the free white persons on the land. That's why when other people come here, I don't care if they're Black as coal, they allow them to have the status of white. It has nothing to do with skin complexion. It's about Black and white because this is a chess game before the people in power. Just like the chessboard, Black and white. Okay, it's a ritual. You're Black, you're white, will pit you against each other, but it's all about status. They made the so-called Black people have Black status because we're prisoners of war. Because they took our land, they took our resources, they took our gold, they took our even our identity and call themselves American, and even allow people to come here, move in, and then be engrafted into the American way of life or nationality. Well, President Donald Jontavius Trump has put out the military and the National Guard to clean up these cities and to make the police departments yield to the sheriffs on the land, because everything's being returned to us, and everybody that's not lawfully here have to leave, and we will determine who can rightfully come on our land. We can determine who can lay claim to some of the resources here. But you're not going to be able to just come up here and absorb the resources like all these people have done for millennia or for decades, at least, and hundreds of years. President Donald Jontavius Trump has said that you have to come with some money. You have to come with a gold card. You have to be willing to put into this economy, not just take away, because people were coming here from all nations, absorbing the resources, accessing our birth certificate bonds and the death certificate bonds of our elders and ancestors, stealing our land, even claiming our nationality. That's identity theft, okay? If I go to China today, I'm still an American. I don't care if I get some type of nationality, I'm still an American. If my children are born there and my children's children, they're still going to say that I'm American. They're not going to say she's Chinese all of a sudden. Now, what they decide to do later on is, these people all over the world, is their business. I'm talking about as of today, people were allowed to come here and take things away from people that were supposed to have inherited this wealth from their ancestors. It's just going to be returned. And that's okay, because everybody will be taken care of. Anybody that wants to receive wealth from their land will need to go back to their land, and they will be taken care of by their nation. Here, you will be taken care of by your nation because we have lots of gold. We have lots of resources. In fact, in Wyoming, 2.3 billion tons of rare earth minerals were discovered 2 years ago. We have lots of gold all along the Colorado River. We have gold all in the western region of the hemisphere, here in America, in Utah, California, that whole western area. We have gold in Texas. We have oil all over America. We have more oil here than they do in Saudi Arabia. Okay, the deep state just didn't want the people here to know. So you're going to be taken care of. Like I said, just like oil rich nations give their people universal basic income, which is an allotment of money, lots of money every month, and free health care, free education, we're all going to have the same here in America. Now, I don't want you to think I'm preaching division, because I'm not. I'm just talking about history and nationality. The original American, according to the 1828 Webster Dictionary, is the copper-colored races found here by Christopher Columbus. Now, the Native Americans came from Asia. That's why they even look Asian, okay? They crossed the Bering Strait at a certain time period. You can put in the comment section when that happened. And they were allowed to stay here and dwell in the teepees and, certain areas here, but they're not the original people here. Native born and natural born is two different things. You should have learned that when President Trump said that Kamala Harris was not fit to be the president here. And the reason why she wasn't is because she was not natural born. Now, the forefathers put in the Constitution and framed the law so that if in order to serve as president or vice president, you had to be natural born here on the land, from the land, and subject to the jurisdiction of the country or the state, in which you were born. I said country because each state, according to our republic here in America, are actually countries. So you can be born here in California like Kamala Harris was, but if you are not natural born, you can't be president of our great republic. Okay, if you're not natural born, meaning if you haven't sprung from the soil, native born may mean you might have been born here, but your body isn't from your ancestry is not from here. Natural born means that it's the area that your ancestors came from. So Kamala Harris, most of these presidents were natural born. They were born here. Native born, they were born here, but they're not natural born. The indigenous people are the only true presidents and leaders of Morocco because they sprung from the soil. Natural born means that the same genetic code that's in the dirt is the same genetic code that's in our colon, because you literally sprung from the soil. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Where do you think that come from? You sprung from the soil. You were created from the soil of particular places. And so it has your ancestors. That's why the scripture says that God made man from the soil. When you know that there were beings that came here and made or created certain humans, they took their genetic code along with the dirt in the soil and the codes in the soil, and they created certain human beings according to many texts. But overall, what we know just from a genetic memory and from our ancestors speaking to us is that we sprung from the soil here in America, and people that are natural born in their region sprung from the soil there, or was created from the soil there. So natural born and native born, two different things. Native Americans came from Asia. They crossed the Bering Strait. They dwell in teepees. Some of them are now known as $5 Indians because they, along with some Europeans, paid $5 to be on the Dawes Roads to claim land from the government in order to disinherit the autogenous original American people, misnomered and misclassified as Black, colored, Negro, and African American. Okay, a lot has been done to disinherit us from our land, but we're having a great awakening right now during this age of awareness, during the age of Aquarius, during the second coming of Christ, which is what the corona was about, trying to suppress the crown chakra of all people all over the planet, and especially here in America, okay? Because they knew, the people in power knew that this was the age of awakening, where your Christos consciousness was opening up and you were having an ascension in your consciousness, and they knowing that you all have been enslaved, and a knowing of who you are based on your genetic memory now being awakened. So they were saying to themselves, we got to suppress these people. We're coming to the age of Aquarius. We have to suppress the crown chakra. We will call it corona, but it's really a virus that was created in a lab in order to unalive as many people as possible so we can continue to reign. In banking terms, they were talking about corona because corona means crown, as in crown chakra, as in gold, as in we're returning to or ascending to the golden era where gold will be used to liberate the people on a monetary level and on a physical and metaphysical level, which is why right now and for some years I've been taking monoatomic gold as well as monoatomic and colloidal silver and gold. Gold will in the Fed, but gold and silver also, and bronze also has medicinal purposes. A lot of these metals are called precious because they not only have been used for money, but they cause you to awaken. They make your body become more hormonally balanced. They cause you to have more psychic abilities. They awaken your crown chakra. They enlighten you. They increase your libido and give you high sexual energy so you can procreate, so you can manifest. Okay, it gives you lots of energy along with raw fruits and vegetables, which is what I'm doing right now, eating a diet mainly consisting of raw fruits and vegetables. So I don't want to keep you here. This is a very exciting time to be alive. Remember, the 13th is just a few days from here. This is the 10th. This is 10-10. Remember the Q post talked about the Mickey Mouse clock that had 10-10 on it. Maybe they were talking about October the 10th. Something special was going to happen today. Melania Trump, Melanin Trump, Melanin Trumps. Melanin is reclaiming their empire again, and all her children. Everybody has melanin, right? But those that have melanin are really just beings. Melanin and carbon represents life. That's it. All of us have the life in us, like the plants and animals and insects, that the beings that colonize us, I'm not talking about a race of people, I'm talking about entities or beings that are not human. We have a life force that some of them don't have. Now they are living, but we have special abilities that they cannot conquer, that they don't understand or understand, and they've been trying to suppress. Okay, that's why they like our organs. And the more concentrated with melanin and carbon you are, the more they wanted you. They really, really desired highly melanated beings or people and children. But the souls of the children, according to Melania Trump, knows no boundaries. They are forever. They are the future. We have to preserve and protect them. But those beings in power ate our children, stole our children, took the organs of all people, but the one they really wanted was the organs of melanated people and genetics of melanated people. That's why you have abortion clinics that are populated in the so-called Black community. That's why you have drugs and guns in our community. So their thought was to take as many of us out as possible because we are the original inhabitants of the land. We are the original man and woman. Okay. So they wanted to take us out first, and then they were coming after our less melanated brothers and sisters, are the Europeans and the other nations, because they wanted to first get us, then they were going to take over them. Okay. Then they wanted to take over the whole world so that they can, these entities or these beings just wanted to have the entire planet for themselves, and any beings that were human beings that were left over, they were going to use as slaves. But that's over. Their time is up. The clock is ticking. This is now 10-10. Something huge is going to happen. Like there was an explosion today in Egypt, known as Tennessee here in America. There was an explosion here in America. I will look at what that explosion that occurred today on 10-10 was about, and I will look at the articles if I were you, and look for numerology and codes to tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. So today is the 10th, 11, 12, 13. We got 3 more days. Then on something, you're going to see a lot of stuff being rolled out. The 13th being Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day is the day when schools are shut down and banks are closed. You need to talk about what that means for you. Here in Jacksonville, some things have changed. For example, now to get your children out of schools, as a parent, you have to show your government ID You can't just walk up in the school and drop them off or pick them up. You have to show your government ID. That's been instituted like 2 weeks ago. Even teachers now have to show their government ID as well as their school ID. So something is going on. They've been preparing for something. Also, we have people that work at the dock workers saying that they haven't been receiving shipments, and truckers are saying they haven't been picking up shipments from the ships because like 5 to 10 companies or departments like Walmart, Target, different places, a whole bunch of different places can pick up shipment from one ship, but they haven't been receiving shipments at some places. So a lot is happening, as well as a lot of flights are being delayed or grounded because workers that work at the airports who don't get paid during government shutdowns are walking off the job. They're like, I forget this, I'll take a sick day or sick days, or I'll just walk off because I'm not getting paid anyway. And that's causing flight delays. It's causing TSA to now, go through TSA can take double time. This shutdown of the government had to occur. And that's why I say America is now sovereign. The shutdown that occurred during the feast days between the Feast of Trumpets, when the trumpets sound, on the Feast of Trumpets, Trump sent a letter out to all the military and told him to meet him and the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, in Virginia. Okay. He is the trumpet in Zion. That happened on the Feast of Trumpets, okay? And they met between the 23rd and the 30th. Then at midnight on the 30th, which is actually October 1st, which is ushers in the Day of Atonement, the government shut down because the United States Incorporated had to close down because they are enemies. They are our enemies. They are bloodline families that usurped authority from the original copper-colored people here. And then they not only enslaved us here right on this land and made us prisoners of war, but they then enslaved everybody. They expanded slavery to include enslaving everybody in America and all across the globe. So those bloodline families and entities and all their corporate cohorts that call themselves government and government agencies like the FBI, the CIA, the IRS, the DMV, all of them had to shut down. They are enemy combatants. The United States Incorporated is defunct, bankrupt, over. They've already voted 2 times whether or not they're going to open back. They have one more time to vote. They're supposed to vote in 3s. I'm not sure, but that's what I heard. They may be shut down forever because their time is up, okay? It's over for them, and the republic is being restored and resurrected. The republic, our lawful government and constitutional law, is being restored back to the people here in America and all across the world, which is why President Donald Trump talked about declaring or making a Department of Peace to declare peace in America, peace in the Middle East, and peace all across the globe. So as you recall, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the Chevron Doctrine, which overturned the powers of the government because the Chevron Doctrine gave the United States government power to do whatever they wanted to create the statutes, codes, and policies and force us, all people here in America and abroad, to agree with them and abide by them. And if you didn't, you would be put in handcuffs, taken to court, and forced to pay a fine. Well, the police officers now are being told all across the lands to stand down. And the United States Incorporated shut down because the Supreme Court of the United States not only said that the United States Incorporated, the government, was unlawful, but all of those entities were treasonous. This is another reason why the trumpet players, the Brunson brothers, you see the Coles trumpet players, brought a court case against the whole Biden administration, Biden, Pelosi, Kamala Harris, and 385 members of Congress. They all have to shut down. The republic will be restored, and then we will return to common law, which is the law of the land according to the indigenous people and indigenous tribes and races here. Everybody else gotta go home. Anybody that decides to stay here has to operate according to our tenets: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And our peace treaties between us, our ancestors, and your ancestors will be honored. Now, unlike a lot of people that came here, we are about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I mean, our original dynasty, our original way of life. We operate and live and thrive in harmony with people. So we're going to restore that here. We're going to restore Mayat's principles from which the 10 Commandments came. Okay. We're going to restore the matriarchy, which just means that the women will govern the society and the men will carry out what we decide is law for the women, men, and children, animals, and nature. My name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I trust that I've said something to raise your vibrations and inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. Go out and make this a great day, family. You're about to receive tremendous, tremendous wealth. I said it, I declare it, and so it is. Peace. Comment in the comment section how you think I look being on this all raw fruit and veggie diet and drinking only water and herbal teas. And comment whether or not you'd like to try it. And tell me what you think about the serpent that I wear on I have a serpent necklace and I have a serpent ring. Some people think it's evil. But when you understand what the ancients thought about serpent energy and how serpents actually protected our secrets and our wealth, you'll get an understanding as to why I am reclaiming my and celebrating my Egyptian heritage. I love you. Bye-bye. Dr. Kia out.